My name is Brian Dalton, and I play Mr. Deity on the Mr. Deity Show, which is a satirical look at God and the universe. Well, I was very religious before. I grew up Mormon. I am now a foreman. That's a former Mormon. That's my term. I copyrighted that. You can't use that. In my late teens, I got really into it. I was really quite rabid. A lot in my late teens and early 20s, and I mean, I did an album of Mormon music. We had we were like a hit on Mormon radio in Utah.
Does this exist?
It does, yeah. There's Mormon radio all throughout Utah.
No, I mean, does your album exist?
Oh yeah, well, you probably can't get it anymore because it's out. I'm sure it's been out of print. This was in 1986.
I mean, do you have it? Shouldn't we be selling this?
No. It's quite embarrassing to me, but it's very. The sound of it was very early '80s, kind of Mike Post meets Lionel Richie meets, later Barry Manilow. It was, a very spiritual album and whatnot. And we toured around the Western United States promoting it and doing all kinds of stuff like that. And then I got in. I just got in. I was very much into it. I met a guy named Dennis Prager, who's a radio talk show host, syndicated now all over the country. He was a leading Jewish thinker and scholar, and I was working with him and for him, doing his newsletter and kind of stuff like that as a graphic designer. And then I got into the Judaism and all of this stuff, and I started kind of realizing there were other people who were as devoted and faithful and intelligent and all of that stuff, and it kind of tweaks with your mind, because Mormonism is very insular. I know I can say that. You kind of stick with your group and you don't really know much about what's going on outside, and it consumes your whole life. So it was quite an experience for me, and basically what got me out of that is Mormonism, the way you know the truth of Mormonism is you pray about it, and then God reveals it to your heart. You have a burning of the bosom is the way they talk about it, a warm feeling inside and all that stuff. And I just, at a certain point you get to an age where you think, can I really trust my heart? I mean, if you're 23 and you don't realize, that your heart has let you down at least a dozen times by the time you hit that age, there's something, you need to see someone. That's my thinking. And so I just came to distrust the methodology. And of course, Mormons are like every other religion. If they think they have evidence for something, they're putting it out there. They always go for the evidence. Evidence is always so much better than your heart if you've got it, right? Nobody chooses your heart over the evidence, generally. So there were a lot of Mormon books written by people who were saying, oh, there's all kinds of evidence of this and that, the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi Library and archaeology in Mesoamerica and kind of stuff like that. And so I thought, well, okay, there's all this evidence, I'll check it out. And that was pretty much the end of it, because Mormonism is unlike almost every other religion in that it's almost solely based on empirical claims. The whole religion is about Native Americans actually being one of the lost tribes of Israel that came here from Jerusalem in 600 BC and blah, 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 blah. Well, the problem with that is that the DNA, by the time I left in the early 90s, the DNA was coming in. They weren't Hebrews. They were North Asians, as everyone suspected they would be. And then, there's so many problems with, the society that he envisioned in the Book of Mormon for these peoples was a total Middle-aged, New World kind of society with swords and horses and chariots and all of these things that simply didn't exist at the time. So that information was coming in, and it was becoming more and more accessible. Now it's super accessible thanks to the internet. And I just realized at a certain point, this is just completely untrue. And I stayed with it even though I knew that, because it's a lifestyle. It's your whole life is consumed by it. And then they started excommunicating people who were telling the truth about things. And at that point, it was Galileo to me. And I said, I got to get out of here. And I left. And that was the start of it. So I left Mormonism and I kind of wandered around trying to figure out who I was, what I was thinking and whatnot. And this is to me one of the great ironies of my life, is I was still right-wing and Mormon enough after I'd left to where I was listening to Dr. Laura. And Dr. Laura, a lot of people don't know this, but Dr. Laura used to be a skeptic. She was on the board of Skeptic Magazine, and she had written an article on false memory syndrome that she'd been talking about. So I went out and got the magazine, Skeptic Magazine, and I'm reading her article, and then I just start reading the other stuff, and I'm like, holy crap, this is these are my people. This is kind of the way I've come to think. And I didn't really know that there was a skeptical movement or skepticism. I didn't know anything about it. And then I started going to the meetings at Caltech, and picking up materials, and I got more and more into it. I read some Paul Kurt's books. And thought, geez, this is who I am. This is what I think. This is the way to do it. You test claims. People make claims. You take a look at them and you see whether the evidence goes their way or not. And if it doesn't, you just go, okay, well, we'll keep our mind open for that if there's some evidence more later. But for now, I'm writing that one off. And that was pretty much my entree into skepticism. I don't really have anything to do with Mormonism anymore. When I left, one of the things is you leave, no one ever tells anybody, stop talking to this guy, but you're pretty much out of the loop. I mean, if you leave, I lost so many friends. I mean, basically everyone I knew within the church, it's kind of like, we're not going to hang with him anymore. We're not, there's nothing said. There's no police force enforcing it. It's just kind of known he's dangerous. Because he thinks now for himself. So I lost a lot of friends, and I don't really keep, track of what's going on in the church. I know a lot of Mormons former Mormons, I should say, who do, because it's such a cultural thing. You're raised in it, and you're real tight. You don't do a lot outside the church. The church doesn't have a paid clergy, so you're always doing something for the church, and your life pretty much revolves around it. And then when you get out, it's like, where's my community? Where's my people? So a lot of people feel the need to stick in it. I didn't. I guess because I did already. I had a lot of non-Mormon friends already, and didn't need that kind of thing. Well, the thing is, what I came to see is that Mormonism is kind of a microcosm of all religion in terms of how it develops, how it evolves. It's basically you have something that you don't understand. Basically, people came here to America, and there were these people here, and their Bible hadn't talked about them. Who are they? God knows all. He surely would have said something about it. And there was a lot of that kind of thinking. Joseph Smith's idea that the Native Americans were one of the lost tribes was not a unique idea. Other books had been written. Solomon Spaulding wrote a book. Ethan Smith, no relation to Joseph, wrote a book called View of the Hebrews. So the idea was already out there, and he just picked it up and ran with it. But it's basically, who are these people? We don't know. So you make something up that sounds good. It seems plausible. It's the same thing with the creation of the earth. Everyone has their creation stories, because we need an explanation of why things are and how we came to be and all that kind of stuff. In Mormonism's case, it's who are the Native Americans. So they make something up, and then as time goes on, then you realize, oh, this was just made up, because all the evidence starts to go another way. And so Christianity is a little harder because it's so removed, but I do think, I'm very much convinced that if you really start looking at the New Testament and the documents involved, and you go back to the earliest writings, which are all Paul's writings, and he doesn't really mention a physical person who lived on this planet with us. It's very much kind of the, what did they call it, the Gnostic kind of religion take on a deity. It's just not there until you get into the Gospels, and the Gospels come 2-3 generations later, the earliest, and then even that one is not very, you look at the end of the Gospel of Mark, it's like, really? And there's a part that's tacked on, and everybody knows it was tacked on, because the ending is so unsatisfying. It doesn't really fit with the rest of the religion. And then Matthew and Luke and John took care of that later. They added stuff that wasn't there. And I do think that all of religion, religion is just another question that skepticism can look at. Okay, you think this book is the word of a transcendent, all-knowing, all-powerful, omnibenevolent being. Let's look at that. if you start looking at it, what you find is that, the first thing God does, when he starts talking to his people, what is he obsessed with? He's obsessed with how to kill a ram or a goat or tear the head off a turtle dove. This is not transcendent stuff. This is Bronze Age tribalism. It's not. You can look at it and go, does it seem like the word of a transcendent being? No. So to me, all of this, and I know a lot of skeptics don't want to go into the religion thing because I don't know why. Quite frankly, maybe it's fundraising. I don't know. That's what Richard Dawkins said at TAM last year. But religion really is just another skeptical claim to be looked at and say, well, okay, does this make sense? Does it, maybe you can't go back and find the evidence, although, the thing is, the stuff for Moses and the Israelites, the wandering in the wilderness, the best Israeli scholars who have been dying to find something because it solidifies their claims to the land of Israel and all that kind of stuff. Nothing. They can't find it. They just can't find it. So at a certain point, you have to say, all right, you know what? This is man-made stuff that they made up after the fact. There's no evidence of a mass slaughter in Canaan. The way the Bible talks about it. Thank heavens. That to me, that should be good news. But to a lot of people who believe in the Bible, it's awful because, then the whole thing you got to kind of look askance at it and say, maybe it's just not what it says it is.
So do you feel there's a lot of pot and kettle going on with against Mormonism and stuff like Scientology or whatever?
Yeah, although obviously you go for the easiest target first, and those who have stuff that is so easily taken down, like Mormonism. Joseph Smith said that the people here were middle-aged people. With swords and chariots and horses and all the elephants and all kinds of animals that they brought with the old world and seeds and stuff that just never existed here. So it's such an easy takedown. There are population problems. They come here with 40 people, and then years later, we're talking in the millions, which presumes a birth rate that didn't happen in the world till like 1960. People back in 600 BCE were dying off left and right. It took. I think the birth or the mortality rate is like 0.0001. So it takes you 1,000 people, 1,000 births to add one to your population. So it's a lot of, or is it 100? It might be 100. You got to have a lot of stuff going on before you even get there. So how do you all of a sudden end up with millions and millions of people populating a continent just a few hundred years later? Not a continent, two continents really, North and South America, because that's what the Book of Mormon says, is that they were so numerous that they were from the top and the bottom and the east and the west, covering the land. So that's an easy target. Scientology, I think, is equally easy just because it's so wacky. When you get into the founding ideas of it and this kind of cosmic science fiction thing from a science fiction writer, not a big. You don't need to have a big brain to figure that one out. But people are coming down now on the founding stories of Judaism and Christianity, and there's a lot being written about that kind of stuff. And I do stay up on that because just because the show, Mr. Deity, is so centered on Christianity and Judaism. We don't really do much on Mormonism. Again, because it's almost too easy of a target. Although we do have one that we're going to do in season 4 about Joseph Smith, where Joseph Smith has all kinds of great ideas for the latter days. Mr. Deity loves the kid. So we're going to have fun with that. But I very much keep up on the Jewish and Christian stuff. I am an atheist, and the only reason it's important to say that, I think, is because so much of the rest of this country is not. So it's a way to distinguish yourself in terms of that. But yeah, it is kind of weird to identify yourself as in terms of something you don't believe in. So I would probably definitely call myself a skeptic first and an atheist second. But I don't honestly know how you can be a skeptic and not an atheist. That's the one that baffles me. Here's what I call myself. I've always called myself a practical atheist. And what I mean by that is the issue of does God exist doesn't interest me at all. It has no practical value to me because we are completely without any reliable methodology for determining anything about this being. So, people say, oh, I know that what God wants, that we want this, he wants that. And how do you find out whether that's what he wants or not? For all we know, what God really wants, maybe there is a God, but what he really wants is people to be skeptical and not believe in things. And those are the guys who get rewarded in the next life, and the people who follow like sheep. Anyone who says anything, they're going to the barbecue. So there's just no value in it. And then there's another level on top of that in terms of just putting God to the side and that is, it doesn't solve anything. The God question doesn't solve anything. People say, well, we need God for morality. But appealing to God doesn't solve the morality questions because we still have to decide that on our own. And I always use the example when someone's really biblical at me, they say, well, you can't do morality without religion. Okay, so we only know what's good by listening to God. So God said, let's kill the homosexuals. Do you want to kill the homosexuals? Do you want to kill adulterers? Do you want to kill people who don't believe in your faith? Well, no. Well, how did they come to that? How did they come to that not being good? If God said that was good at one time, it must be good forever because he's eternal. He's unchanging. So that must be a good, and that must be the moral thing to do. Kill homosexuals and adulterers and non-believers. But nobody does that. Nobody looks at the book and just says, yeah, that's what we're going to do. It doesn't happen anymore because we know that we have to have some kind of moral reasoning behind the moral decisions that we make and the moral actions we take. So on top of there not being any way to decide what God wants, it's also just irrelevant. It solves nothing. The whole God thing just doesn't solve anything. So in that regard, I'm a practical atheist. But I do think that religion and the claim that there is a God is just another claim that can be looked at and said, okay, what's your reasoning? And either it's so compelling that you got to go with it, or it's not compelling, and I leave my mind open. Maybe there is a God. I don't know. It's part of me having been religious. I like the idea. I don't want to die. I don't want to end. I don't want to stop existing. I would love there to be something afterward. I don't want it to be like the Christian view of an afterlife. But sure, I'd like to live on forever, at least till I get really tired of it, and then I'll just stop existing again. But those don't control what I say that I really believe, and that was the issue when I left Mormonism. It was a question of, can I look myself in the mirror and say, yes, I believe this? And if you can't, then you got to walk away. Well, it's interesting because Dawkins kind of deals with that in the God delusion. I think it's only untestable in a large kind of big cosmic way. In a very specific, this is what our religion says God wants kind of way, yeah, you can look at it. Like I said earlier, if you say these are the words of transcendent being, and then you read it and he doesn't understand that rape or slavery are bad things and should be prohibited, then you got to look askance and say, just with my skeptical eye, just with my reasoning brain, I don't think that came from a transcendent being. So your claim that X, Y, or Z, it's impossible to answer the question in terms of a bigger, does a God exist? Because how do you define God? Is it a personal being? Is it a force? What are we looking at here? There's no definition that we can go, okay, here I'm gonna, and that's really what the claims are. Once you start defining God as an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving being, then questions like evil, why does evil exist? Those become questions which they don't negate the possibility of a God, but they make you go, come on, seriously, really? He's all-powerful, he's all-knowing, he's all-loving, and he couldn't do better than this? I can do better than this. If you ask me to create a universe tomorrow, I could do better than this in terms of the evil. And this is a guy who knows everything. I mean, there's the question of, well, if he knows everything, just create the people who are going to be good and end up in heaven anyway, and then have them there with you. That's all you need to do. You don't need to create this menagerie of evil and suffering and tragedy. It's just there's just so much ridiculous about the idea to begin with that I think, yeah, you can't answer whether there's some force or whatnot. But I think the questions of a personal God and a God who's X, Y, and Z, I think you can go, well, that's kind of testable. Let's see. You know, if I were an all-knowing, all-good, all-powerful being, is this what I would do? I don't think so. I just don't see it. I just don't see it.
Well, what about those skeptics who do believe in the amorphous, you know, New Age hippie kind of God?
Yeah. I don't have a problem with that. I just don't know what the, you know, it's like, to me, it's like deism. What is the point of deism? Okay, there's a God out there, and he has nothing to do with this, and he just lets shit happen to everybody. Okay, you believe in him, and therefore what? You know, there's no, what is the value to that? What is the value to your life to think that there's some being who doesn't give a shit about you? You know, that makes me feel worse, you know? So one of the problems for me as when I was getting out of the religion was that I realized, for me, the God thing actually caused more anguish and you know, disturbance in me emotionally and mentally than just saying, you know what, there's no one there. It's because really what you have to deal with is how do all these terrible things, you know, happen? Why does a good God let all this crap go down? And you know, you can try to justify that in your own mind. Oh, we don't know. It's my crazy little dog, Cookie. Hi, Cookie Doodle. Hi, Cookie. Yeah, she's a good girl. You know, I was just more disturbed by the thought that there's someone up there and just either incredibly incompetent or just not cool. You know, I mean, doesn't get it. You know, maybe he is some kind of being who has no concept of what it's like to be a physical being and doesn't understand pain, or you know. But there's something going on there. That's in essence the root of the deity character. The Mr. Deity is both incredibly insensitive and completely incompetent. I mean, that's what that character comes down to. So
how about that? How did Mr. Deity happen? Why did it happen?
Mr. Deity came about because I had written this little like 4-page script after the Asian tsunami, because so many people were talking about the tsunami, and you know, we're talking about 250,000 people just wiped out like that, you know. And I was thinking, you know, how do you believe in a good God who just, you know, it's natural disasters are one of those things where you can't really say, oh, it's human evil, it's, you know, people are doing it. Not only is it an act of God, but it's so gratuitous. There's no reason. If we never had a natural disaster on the planet, no one would ever go, oh, there must be a God. You know, it's not like it's a slam dunk. There's still enough gratuitous suffering going on where it makes that issue questionable. If God wants us all to live by faith, there's still enough there to ask us to live by faith if you take out the natural disaster. So I wrote this little thing about it, which everyone now knows as Mr. Deity and the Evil, the first episode, where they're deciding what evils God's going to allow. And I passed it around, and a lot of people liked it, and I had made a movie with these two guys who were fantastic. They were just electric together. It was one of those great pairings. And I thought, let's get them to do it. That would be great. And they just weren't interested. They didn't want to make the time commitment, and they thought, you know, this is a little, I don't know about this material, and am I going to be typecast if I do a bunch of these? And so I sat on it for a couple of years, and then one day Jimbo and I were driving back from a shoot. We used to do a lot of video production together, and he said, that Deity stuff is too good. Why don't you and I just get together? I'll play Larry and you play Mr. Deity, and let's just shoot one and see how it goes. So we did, and the first time I was such a miserable wretch on camera because I'd never acted. I'd only been directing from behind. Then we shot it again a second time. That wasn't as bad, but it was still pretty bad. And then by the third time, I finally got, okay, I think I get this. I think I can do it. And it's not just the acting; it's that you have to direct and act at the same. I had no clue how to do that, and it's very hard. And you gotta be very. You know, I'm one of these people who you could probably tell by this interview. I go from here to there and here to there, and you got to be incredibly focused, and that's not my bag. I'm such an ADD kind of guy, and I kind of had to learn that there are certain things I have to do, and I got to make sure that this is getting done and that's getting done, and check the audio and check the focus, and you know, and then go out there and then try to be not the guy that you were 2 seconds ago behind the camera. It was really hard. I've kind of gotten the hang of it now, But I was beside myself. The whole first season, I was constantly calling Jimbo, this is awful. It's just awful. I suck. I'm horrible. It's not funny. We can't put this up. And Jimbo would have to talk me down and whatnot. But by the time we were with Sony during the second season, I was kind of like, okay, I think I know what I'm doing now. So that's how it started.
So are you guys sponsored by Sony? Is that?
Well, no, we were with Sony for the second season of Mr. Deity, which was only on Crackle and iTunes. So you can't find it on YouTube. It's kind of hard to find. We're getting everything up on the site now so that everyone can just watch all the way through if they want. And we're going to have we're even going to do a chronological playlist where you can watch them in chronological. You're going to have to get back and forth between seasons. But I thought that would be kind of fun if we made a chronological playlist. But we went with Sony for the second season because what happened is we put up the show. We put up the first 3 episodes, which we had already shot, and we were kind of waiting to get our website going, and we were going to do something more directly through the website. And then Jimbo called me and said, oh, there's this thing called God Inc. You got to throw this up now or people are going to think we're ripping them off. Well, I didn't really know what it was, but I said, okay. It turns out their thing was like The Office with God in it. It was like God's The Office, the TV show. So there wasn't really any similarity between the two, but we threw it up and we were kind of unprepared, but someone mentioned it on Dig or one of those sites, and it started getting a lot of views, and then YouTube said, well, if it's getting a lot of views, let's put it to the front page. And they featured it on the front page, and then it just went through the roof. And I mean, literally within probably, I want to say 6 weeks, we had all kinds of different companies calling, wanting to do something with Mr. Deity, and we ended up going with Sony, which was great financially, but we didn't feel like we got the promotion we deserved. We lost a lot of our YouTube audience and whatnot, and so at the end of the second season, it was kind of a mutual thing. They wanted to do something with the show that they really couldn't pull off, and they thought they could, and we were kind of happy to take the show back and do our own thing. So we've been back on our own since I guess 2009. My relationship with Skeptic is basically my relationship with Michael Shermer. Like I said, when I got out of religion, I found the Skeptic Society, Michael's group, and I really found a home there because Michael and I click in that we were both formerly very religious. He gets the religion thing. He there's a lot of people in the skeptical movement who are very dismissive and kind of maybe even a little judgmental about religious folks and whatnot. Either they're stupid or, get a clue, that kind of thing. And Michael didn't have that, and I really like that about him, and I like that just about people in general, because there's a lot more that goes into people being religious than, it has nothing to do with intelligence, absolutely none whatsoever. Some of the smartest people I've ever known are religious. And that kind of understanding that he had, I really liked it. And so we've been kind of friends ever since. I actually designed Skeptic Magazine, the previous iteration, back in the early 90s, because I was a graphic designer at the time. And then we've just, I've stayed in touch with him. We go out to the Caltech events. We're going to be at the Skeptic Conference in June. I just love him. That's basically what it comes down to. He's just the greatest guy, and so I like to try to push Skeptic anytime I can because I love it. But I'm the same way with pretty much every, if I can push the RDF or if I can push, Skeptic Inquirer, anything out there that can change people's minds, that can get them to start thinking more about this stuff, because these things have serious consequences in life. I mean, this stuff is not just, minor little, I mean, it affects, when you're religious, it affects everything you do, everything you think, and everything you support, and everything you promote. And, Aristotle said small errors in the beginning lead to big errors in the end. Well, that's a big error in the beginning that leads to a ginormous error in the end, from my point of view. So I'm very passionate about people kind of ditching the supernatural mindset, just in general. I think it's very harmful. This is an interesting question that I've been debating amongst some of my skeptic friends, because my feeling is one of the reasons why I am so, I don't want to say I'm anti-religious, but I guess I am, because I think what religion does is it opens the door to every other piece of nonsense thinking, because it has this being at the center of it for whom all things are possible. Now, if all things are possible, you have just completely ruined your mind to be able to think critically. So to me, religion is the single most dangerous threat to critical thinking and to you know, a rational world where we can all just sit and talk and everything. Because on top of it, there being that kind of you know, openness to every crazy idea, because who knows, God could be behind it or something. There are also all these injunctions about how we should live and what we should do, and they are not in any way conducive to our values in a free democratic society anymore. I have a whole speech that I give frequently when I'm out about how the values that we love in society now, not just us, not just you and me skeptics or scientists, you know, kind of people or whatnot, humanist. The values that we love, even the religious in this society, are not the values of religion. They are the values of the secular enlightenment. They are, you know, tolerance. You look in your Bible. Go look in your Bible. Go look in your Quran. Tolerance is not a value, okay, that they care anything about. Freedom of religion, not a value in those books. In fact, just the opposite. You don't believe the way I do, we're going to kill you. You can go down the list, almost look down the first 10 amendments of the Bill of Rights, and you'll see that virtually everything in there is a rejection of canon law and the religious societies that were built on canon law in Europe, the Christian nations, if you want to call them that. We got rid of that for good reason. And so to me, the importance of getting rid of that mindset is, if you don't, these people will once again take over, and they want to. I mean, Prop 8 to me was a real wake-up call, because I never thought in California here, this is one of the most liberal states in the country, I never thought for a second that people would take away other people's rights. I thought that we were finally at a point where we saw, you know what, these people are our equals, they deserve equal protection under the law, the 14th Amendment. And it went like that overnight. It was just gone. And that's what will happen if the religious get power again. They will take away your rights, because the things that we love are not what they're told to love and value. And I mean, you can just go down the list. I mean, equality, forget it. Not in there at all. Not between the sexes, not amongst races, not amongst sexual identification. You know, everything we love is opposed in that book and in the two holy books that kind of dominate Western religion. So that's my thinking, is that you're never going to get people to truly be critical thinkers when they've got this supernatural being and everything is possible. And by the way, if you don't do this, we're going to kill you. So it's a dangerous idea. Well, you know what? When you've been in it, and when you've done it, and when you've been there and you've been duped, and you know, I know myself. I'm not an idiot. There are reasons why I went for it, and they're psychological, they're cultural, they're I mean, just the whole existential angst about why we're here and you know, all of that kind of stuff. I get it, but it is kind of one of those things where you have to grow up and you have to get beyond it. To if you want to create a great society and live in a great world where everyone has everything they want, because those ideas are generally almost always tied to somebody telling you how you should be living, and we don't live in that kind of society anymore. We just don't. That kind of stuff went the way of the dinosaur 200 years ago. Aside from religion, are we talking aside from religion?
Sure,
okay.
Why not?
I think one of the things that I'm frequently annoyed with is like food fads. I I hate food fads. I guess maybe because when I was younger, I got hooked in them, and they're just, you know, there's so much worrying about, you know, Dean Adele, who's one of my favorite skeptics. Dr. Dean Adele wrote a book maybe 15 years ago called Eat, Drink, and Be Merry about you know, how we just over obsess about food. You know, just get a well-balanced, rounded diet. You're okay. You're good. Everything's good to go. But you know, these food fads that come out about, you know, don't cook your food or eat food in these combinations or this, you know, carbohydrates to protein thing. And you know, I get that we're getting closer and closer to kind of understanding more about that stuff. But in the end, it just bugs me that people are having to worry. You know, I hate anything in life that makes you worry or suffer gratuitously. There's enough crap going on. Don't add to our, you know, our stress and our misery of things. Just let it go. But I mean, there's so much silliness out there, isn't there? I mean, you know, water dowsing cracks me up. I mean, that to me is one of the funniest things ever. It's almost like, I mean, the first time I heard about it, I was like, come on. Seriously, really? Nobody. And then you find out there are all these people who believe in it. It's like, and you know, in general, I just feel like, really, people, why do we need to? And what are you looking for? You know, there's so much great stuff in life already that's real and it's here, and we can enjoy it. You know, from art and literature to music and. You know, just going out and having a good time with your friends, and these people get obsessed with these little minuscule things that mean nothing and are usually woo or flim-flam, as James Randi called it. It's just such a distraction from everything that's truly good and beautiful and wonderful that we should be enjoying, you know? That's the saddest part to me. Well, I mean, in totality, this does go back to my religious background. I mean, if one of those crazy things could be true, I wish there really were a loving God. I can't believe in the all-knowing and the all-powerful with the loving. Those three, one of them's got to go. I'll take all loving, and it would be nice if I didn't have to end. You know, I mean, there's part of me that goes, well, maybe it's okay. You know, it's all right. It never bothered me before I existed that I didn't exist. It won't bother me after, and I get it. But you know what? I love life so much, and I love the people in my life, and yeah, I could see that going on for a long time. I could see that going for a while. I don't know that I could go for the eternity thing. You know what I mean? Eternity is still a little, like, at some point, aren't you just done? You know, you're just, all right, you know, what else can you do? Can you do this again? But maybe not. You know, I'm never bored of hanging out with my wife. I love my wife. We have a great time together. We're best friends. I can't imagine that I'd ever get bored unless she just becomes the most awful person ever. And then you just get another one. You know, no, kidding, sweetie. But yeah, I guess I would like to, you know, in that regard, if we could just push our lifespans, you know, that would be another great thing. If I could live 500 years, I think I could be happy with 500 years. I go, okay, I'm done. I saw a lot. Yeah. The preferred word for me is usually bullshit. I guess Penn and Teller coined that one. I can't take it. But yeah, woo is not yet well known enough. People think I'm going to be talking about some kind of vaginal insertion product or something. No, I'm sorry, that was awful. But you know, what the hell is woo? Nobody knows what that means. Flim flam is good. Most people get flim flam, but bullshit just has a, you know. I'm one of these people who I don't believe there are bad words. You know, there are words that are inappropriately used at times. But I don't believe any word is bad. So those kinds of words don't have the effect on me that a lot of people have in terms of being, oh, that's vulgar and, you know, low class, low rent. So bullshit is just perfect. And it really does. I mean, it just stinks to high heaven. I mean, there's no better, you know, way to articulate that. I think the biggest problem regarding the skeptical movement is, number one, probably community, in terms of people being aware that there is a community. That's why I like those billboards that American Atheist puts up, that says, hey, we're out here, you don't believe, you're not alone, kind of thing. I think there are a lot of people who don't believe, but they don't realize there's this community of people who think as they do. And the one thing religion really gets right is that sense of community. And I think we need to be better about coming together. It's hard, though, because the problem with the skeptic community is that we're a bunch of free thinkers. So we don't agree on things. You get in a religion, you're lockstepped in, and it's good. You can march right in line with everybody else, and it really, that fosters a sense of community in a way that maybe we will never have, because we're just not like that. We're not the sheep. We don't just follow along. So there's always kind of this, headbutting and whatnot, and hopefully we should be able to understand that and appreciate that as people who believe in the scientific method. That's the way things get resolved. And the other thing I think is, in general, I think we need to be more positive. Here's what we do believe, instead of here's what we don't believe. That's why when I'm out, I push this idea of these great values that we all love. They're ours. They're ours. They're not the religion's. The values that you love, they came from us, our groups, the atheists, the skeptics, the humanists. Those are the ideas that we're all embracing here in these great democracies in the West. Do you like it? We got more of it. We got more. That's what we need to be saying. There's been a lot of, and I understand it. You have to do it. You have to tear down sometimes before you can build up. But I do think we have to come up with a real positive message and get people to understand that we're for a lot of great stuff that they already love. It's an easy sell. My favorite joke, I have a joke from my old Mormon days, which I loved to tell because it's so Mormon. It's just quintessentially Mormon. The first presidency of the church is made up of three guys, and they run the church basically. There's 12 beneath them and then 70 beneath them. And it's a very bureaucratic, organized structure. But so the top three guys, one day they decide, you know what? Hey, let's go break some commandments today. All right, let's go out and just really raise some hell. So they all go out. They go down to the liquor store. They get some Coca-Cola, and they come back up to their offices. And the second counselor breaks his open and he drinks it. Oh yeah, all right. And this first counselor says, okay, I'm going to. He opens his Coke. He swings it back. Oh, that was fantastic. Oh, man. And the president finally, they say, well, it's your turn. He says, well, come on, guys. I can't do it. He says, well, what do you mean you can't do it? He says, someone's got to drive. But I used to tell that a lot more when I was in the church. But it's a pretty good joke, and it gives you some idea of how obsessive Mormons can be about the little details. Because there are Mormons, there's nothing in the religion about drinking Coke. It's kind of its own thing because there's a prohibition on hot drinks, and then that got turned into coffee, and coffee because of the caffeine, and anything with caffeine then is bad. It's how these things evolve, and then all of a sudden no one's drinking Coke because it has caffeine in it. But there's nothing about the caffeine, anywhere in the religion. And it just kind of takes off. And there are a lot of Mormons who won't drink Coke or eat chocolate. They eat carob instead of chocolate. It's like, well, you are missing out on life, I got to tell you, because I'm a chocoholic. So, yeah. Well, when we started doing this, Jimbo and I were both in Temecula. I used to live in Temecula, and Sean lives in Burbank. He's an actor. And so he is where he needs to be. When Amy and I got together, I moved in with her because she has 2 kids that are still here. Mine's raised and gone, and this is where they live. This is where they grow up. They go to school, and there's just no way to transplant them. We're not that far out of LA where I can't go in if I need to do anything. I get into Burbank fairly frequently to go to Film Tools, which is one of my favorite places on the planet. Just everything there is just so wonderful. And I'm a what do you call it? I'm a gear junkie. I love anything having to do with, I've got C-stands and Cardellini clamps, and I got the full rig. But I used to make movies. We're getting back to that now, but it's not that far out, where we can't where we can't get in. And I'm not crazy about LA. I got to tell you, get me to New York and I'm there. But
yeah,
LA's
pretty awful.
Yeah, not digging LA, particularly the last 10 years. It's just so difficult to get anywhere. I go to New York City, I'm on the A train and, I'm bang, bang, boom, I'm there, no fuss, no bother. And it's just, the lack of public transportation here is just kills me. Yeah. Well, I got into this whole thing by making a film. I made a film in 2002 called Killing the Dream that did pretty well on the festival circuit. It won the Grand Jury Award it won, and I got directors awards and whatnot. And it played all over. And we were about to sign a distribution deal for the movie, and people at the IFP who really liked the movie and were pushing it and take it to market, the independent film project, said, you know what, with the movie you've got, just reshoot it, because we had done it back in the days of just standard def. Really, it was really done cheaply, and it was a mockumentary, and it was a lot of fun, and the performances were great, but the look of it was awful, and we couldn't get picked up by anyone big. But Miramax liked it; they looked at it, and so did Focus Features, and everybody liked it. But there were problems with the first act. It was the first thing I'd ever done, so we had planned to remake the movie. And one of the reasons we started doing Deity is we thought, you try to get out there and get some financing, and everyone wants to know, well, who's in it, what kind of names you got, even if it's a C-level celebrity, you could probably get some money. Well, we thought, well, if we did this, maybe we'll get enough notoriety where we can be the C-level celebrities who can get a little funding. I'm still not sure if that's true. I don't even know if we've hit the D list, but I know we're not C, that's for certain. But, we've been doing this for a while, and we all just kind of started talking about, we got into this because we wanted to make movies, and we still do. I have probably, 7 or 8 finished scripts that I want to make at some point. Most of them aren't comedies. We have one really good kind of thriller, I don't know what to call it. It's kind of a mystery thriller kind of thing that I would love to make, but it takes money. So what we're going to do is, I'm working on 2 comedies right now that we could shoot on our own for next to nothing. I'm sure we could come up with the money to film these on our own. But we want to get back into that. The indie market has crashed in the last 10 years. It's just gone to hell, largely thanks to Netflix. But I do see that there's a possibility of it coming back around on the net, on the web, and that's what we would be focusing on, is pushing this on the web and doing something like that. And then, of course, still selling DVDs or Blu-rays and stuff like that. But it's one of those things where, it's a tough business, and I think the best way to get into it is just to get out there and just keep doing stuff, just keep making good product. And at some point somebody's going to go, okay, you know what, we trust you with this kind of money, go make a movie. So, but it's making movies is not like making a 5-minute Deity thing. I mean, we can shoot those in a day. You can't shoot a movie, and you need 6 to 8 weeks minimum to shoot a movie, and big movies take months and months and months. So it's a project we're gearing up for, and but we have really good ideas. We have the 2 ideas, which I can't really talk about, are both really good, and I don't think have been done before. So we'll see how that goes. But we're so used to working together now. I know it'll be funny, because we're all we come together on the script on the set sometimes to shoot Deities, and I've got it like 90% of the way there, and then just the batting around and talking about it. And Sean Douglas, who plays Jesus on the show, just comes up with some of the greatest ad libs sometimes. He makes the show a lot of times for me. But Jimbo too. I mean, they're great. Amy, I don't let ad lib because she has to stay strictly to the script. It's semi-true, but she doesn't like the ad lib either. She doesn't want it. She just write it for me, and I'll say what you want me to say. Be skeptical.
Sexy.
There we go.
All right.